Yeah, no, Liam Smee just asked if there's a link. I just sent it to him.
Yeah, okay. It was funny, like even the links that did go out. So we had a few people go to junk and that sort of thing. Such is the internet.
Yes, indeed.
I feel like, the Zoom link getting lost in junk, that's the equivalent of like if your flight being delayed.
Yeah.
You're flying into town and your flight's delayed. So you might get there, but you're going to get there about 10 minutes later.
Or you're at the wrong terminal. Or
Yeah. You end up in Brisbane.
Right, let me go and find out where I need to be.
Yeah. Just my guys?
Yeah.
That's right. All right, live on the Oak Barrel page. Can you check the society page for me, Matt?
Indeed, I'll check it now.
Yeah, went to junk for Joel. There's got to be what I think I might do, particularly next year, is direct to the website as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
So like on the boxes, say on print out stick and say on the day go to this the whiskyfair.com/forum.
Yeah.
Post the link down. That's probably that way. That's a fail safe.
We are live on the society page as well.
Beauty. Yeah, good. Yeah, so 2 sets later. So I reckon.
Oh God.
All righty, how you feeling, Bailey?
Rock and roll.
Ready to get blind?
Well, there's probably just enough whiskey.
Yeah. Even though you're not drinking at the Oak Barrel tonight, RSA still applies.
Please drink responsibly, as we
Please
say.
drink responsibly. G'day, everyone, and welcome to Night 5 of Sydney Whisky Forum. My name is Scott Simon. Sitting to my left, probably to your right, is Joe Perry, the wine educator here at the Oak Barrel. And on the screen, somewhere else in Sydney, is Matt Bailey from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, Australia.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Lovely to be here. I'm super pumped to be a part of this. And it's something that Scotty and I talked about months earlier about collaborating with the society, with the Oak Barrel. And so I'm really glad to be here with you guys virtually.
Yeah. So today is the last Friday of August, which means that normally in the past 10, 11 years, the last Friday of August has been session 1 of Sydney Whisky Fair.
Yeah.
It was a normal year. Right now, we would be 66.66% of the way through the very first session of Whisky Fair on Friday night. We would be, as we were sort of talking before, people would sort of now be going, okay, I've tried everything I marked up on my booklet. Now it's time to hit a few things, go back to some favourites, or what have we missed? It's the time where probably the novelty of the whole thing is wearing off for people like me, to be honest. But
bottles of water going.
Yeah, a lot of bottles of water go around and all that sort of fun. But unfortunately, that is not happening this year. So we have implemented Sydney Whisky Forum, which is, this is officially, well, after this will be halfway, night 5, 10 nights straight of various whisky panels, discussions, and tastings like tonight. And so part of the Whisky Forum, what we wanted to do here at the Oak Barrel was, replicate what we would have been doing anyway. So last night we had the Distillers Dinner, which would have happened. The night before, Tim Duckett's annual look at Tasmania. On the Wednesday night of Whisky Fair week, we did. But I was a little bit, I think these 2 nights, Friday and then tomorrow, were the toughest ones to do. I mean, how do you replicate, 400 whiskies, a bunch of legends from around the country? How do you do that? So, and Forum has as well as sharing drinks and doing virtual tastings, had a bit of an educational element to it. So I think this was actually the first panel that we locked in terms of let's talk about whiskey. Let's talk about tasting whiskey blind and whiskey without the visual stimulus, without prejudice, and talk about that. But then also let's make sure those whiskies that we taste are the sort of whiskies that we would want at Whisky Fair, or of the caliber of Whisky Fair. So basically single cask strength, single malts. And where do we turn for that? Pretty straight away to the Scotch Malt Whisky Society and runner of the Australian branch, Matt Bailey. So this is going to be quite a fun little evening. I don't know what these whiskies are. And if we've sent out about 40 sets to people around the country. If you don't have a set, feel free to still join along, crack a whiskey at home and and join in because we're live on the Facebook, in the Zoom chats and various other locations. So I'll be monitoring all of that. And g'day to everyone on the Society and Oak Barrel Facebook pages. So I'll be monitoring those questions. But yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about this. And before I throw to you, Matt, to tell us about Society and what you've put together, because you're the only one who knows what's going on tonight. I've brought in Joe, who is sort of my opposite number here at the Oak Barrel, but for all things wine. And you, before we poached you to the Oak Barrel, you spent a lot of time in Europe working in restaurants with the Somme and that sort of thing. And tasting wine blind is probably far more prominent than tasting whiskey blind. Not because it's not as fun to do with whiskey, and it's a lot of fun, but there's certain tests and levels, and if you want to be of a certain, get some letters behind your name, you need to pass tests when you do it. I mean, what is it about wine that people want to taste things blind all the time? Like, why put yourself through that punishment?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I did and still do quite a lot of blind tastings with wine. You know, not so much anymore, but back in the day it was sort of a couple of times a week, that sort of thing. And it really is a personal test. I think first and foremost, it's a real challenge, I think, and it's a real adventure to sort of to go down. And like you sort of touched on there earlier, Scotty, it is about maybe just taking the label away once in a while and appreciating this 750 mils or 700 mils in this case of liquid inside this glass vessel for what it is, without any sort of pre assumptions on that. But yeah, like it said, it is. I did a lot of it. I know people that have done a lot more of it than me. You know, with wine, I'd say we probably get a little bit more of a luxury than you guys in whiskey. I know as soon as the wine that's poured in the glass, I know whether it's red or white. So therefore, I can eliminate half the other wines that are made in the world. So yeah, I think you folks make it bloody hard on yourselves doing stuff like this.
That's why our alcohol volumes are higher.
That's true.
We make it hard, but we reward ourselves.
Yeah. So yeah, it's cool to jump in and yeah, I'm gonna see how I don't know enough about whiskey to feel too confident on this, but I'm gonna probably just throw some wine terms out there and I'll leave it to Scott to translate.
But I mean, we will have some people here who are probably members of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, but there's probably some people that aren't, and it might be the first introduction. So, Matt, do you want to take us through a little bit about the society? And I think, from my point of view, this was inherently the one company to choose for to do a blind tasting, just with the way that you do things.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that, Scott, and thanks, Scott and Joe, for that awesome intro. It's really funny to think that, yeah, we would have been 66.6% the way through of our first session at the Oak Barrel Whiskey Fair this time last year. I remember that at that point, my hands were ruined and my breath and my voice was almost gone because of the amount of setup that was involved for our society stage in Australia Hall. There, it was fantastic. And
I'm going to reshare that image actually because it does look. It was quite impressive.
Yeah, show that whilst I'm just doing this. It's just sort of it's quite impressive. There you go. It's a photo from looking down, looking up at the stage. We had these massive posters up on the walls there, and we were quite proud that we'd just also taken out the Independent Bottle of the Year award, which is for the third year in a row, which is quite a big award for us, and something we're quite proud of. And there's you can spot a little bit of Matt Wooler on the left there in his beanie. And a few of our members and people discovering the society up on the top stage there, and also a complimentary Louis Duckett with his face on the bottom right there. So you get a bit of everything in that photo. But
Duckett.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. Really, really great to be a part of, and like I say, kind of missing it this year, but I'm glad that we're able to get together. And the cool thing about tonight is that we've got 5 whiskeys that are already behind a coding system. So they're already kind of blind to begin with. But I've gone to that next step, and this is something we've never done before. So I dare I say you're almost guinea pigs for this kind of idea, in that we're saying, you know, we're taking these 5 whiskeys and we're actually going a step further and saying, okay, we're removing the codes as well. And I think that's really exciting because, as Scott said, there's some society members in here. There's a lot of people I can spot in the comment section who are society members who are going to go, oh, well, I know what that code is. I know what that distillery is. So we've taken that next step out as well. And I'm especially excited that both Scotty and Joe don't know what these are. So I didn't reveal any of this to them. We just did the production and then sent them the packs.
So, I mean, Bailey, you've got a few bottles there. Can you explain? So this is what a regular society bottle looks like in its current form. It's been through a few iterations, and particularly in the most recent years. But yeah, that might be a bit easier. But yeah, so that's actually a more recent one. But can you explain what is the case? So it's a club essentially. You pay a membership fee, and then you get access to club.
You get access to all the club benefits, including the bottlings, events, partner bars. I'll go through all that a little bit as in my presentation, if that's okay.
Yeah, but just like in terms of, so when you buy the bottlings, there's no actual distillery names on these.
No.
Bottles.
So the full details of what you're drinking are on each bottle. The date it was distilled, the region it's from, the cask it came from, the proof, the tasting note, the number of bottles, and the flavor profile. Everything's on the front label except the distillery name. And
which normally, when you walk into a bottle store or a bar, that's the first thing is the distillery name, and then this is sometimes harder to find.
That's right, and as whiskey drinkers, even as experienced whiskey drinkers, we rely on those brands. We rely on those codes. Those. We'd like to see the word Ardbeg or the word Glenfiddich or whatever it is, and go, oh, okay, I know what I'm in for. I know and we take away that, we strip away entirely that preconception of what that distillery should taste like, and that hiding behind that brand as well. So, which I'll talk a bit about if you want. But yeah, this is I don't want to talk too much before we even get a chance to drink anything either. So I'll bring this up if that's, here we go. Okay. So there's our 12 flavor profiles for those playing at home. That's just in a list form, young and sprightly all the way to heavily peated. So we have 12 different flavor profiles that you can see the colors on your bottles and on your tasting mat. We're going from sweet, fruity, and mellow to spicy and sweet, to juicy oak and vanilla, to spicy and sweet, then to lightly peated. Now, it seems like it's almost a shame that out of 12, and we're tasting 5, and I've doubled up on the spicy and sweet, but that will become very apparent why as we go through.
So sorry, Matt, these are, so when like the society panel is choosing which cask to bottle, they then put this into these flavor profiles, or are these coming from the distilleries, or like?
No, these are coming from our expert tasting panel that all go through each of the flavor profiles and pick out which cask will fit each profile. So that the full tasting notes are assessed, and after the tasting notes and everything are written up, there's an overall agreement that this is definitely, say, a spicy and sweet whiskey, or this is definitely an oily and coastal whiskey. And there are some profiles we see less than others, probably more at the extremity. Sometimes we see very few young and sprightlies, and we see very few heavily peated. But when they do come through, there is lots of fun, and they're very different, of course. But it's designed by the panel, and we sometimes use the circular method of which is sort of an adaptation, a simplified version of the Scotch Whisky Research Institute tasting notes. So this has all been developed by the SWRI. Yeah. Just to give some context to the background of the club, because Scotty asked what it's all about. You pay a membership fee, you get access to the full benefits of society. There is a bit of background I just want to quickly run by before we delve into dram number 1. You are welcome to pour them into the glasses a little bit early, let them air a bit, let them gain a bit of exposure, not straight out of those little bottles, because they were bottled straight from bottle to glass bottle. So they're still going to be quite tight. This is our home, our spiritual home and actual home of the society in the vaults in Leith. And it's been operating as a wine warehouse, a wine cellar and whiskey house since at least pre-1587, I should say. There on 2 Giles Street, and there it is. The vaults are in the middle. The apartments, the society apartments that you can stay in as a member, are above on the top floor, and downstairs are the offices. And there's the famous sloping staircase. The man who created it all, Mr. Philip Hills, or known affectionately as Pip Hills. He was a mountaineer and accountant and total eccentric who was farming one day with his friend and was drinking whiskey straight from a cask. And he said that between him and his friend Owen on the farm, between them drank about a gallon of cask strength whiskey straight from a cask of Glenfarclas that was sitting next to Owen's fireplace. And he said he woke up the next day and with no hangover. And he was like, well, I don't like whiskey, but I do like cask strength whiskey. And that was sort of where it sort of started. And he started presenting whiskeys to his friends in a syndicate. And then he took his Lagonda. Yes, he drove around in a Lagonda. This is the eccentricity of Pip in the 80s. And got his first cask from a distillery that might look familiar from those stills. It starts with Glen, ends with Farkless, and bottled distillery cask number 1.1. And that's where the society started. I've never had the opportunity to taste 1.1. I hope to one day, but it's unlikely as there's very few in existence, as we know society members buy these whiskies to drink and enjoy and share around. That's what the vaults used to look like before we moved in. That's taken in 1970. That photograph, that's when it used to be owned by J.G. Thompson, which was a blending company that made blended whiskies. There's a frieze downstairs in the vaults dating back to 1632, and there's some that even date back to 1230. So it's been the longest commercially used wine and whiskey house, if you like, in all of UK that they can record. And then there's it's a very, very bad photograph. I'm sorry, but that was a line of women filling blended whiskies downstairs in the vaults because they were sure that they wouldn't steal any. And so they had them all lined up there.
Our times have changed.
Our times have changed. And this was 1952, mind you, this photograph.
Yeah.
So times have changed, and that's what it looks like today. That was a photo I took just in my last trip last year there. So it's a very warm and inviting space with the apartments upstairs and the bar and the vaults there, and storage downstairs, and it's truly fantastic. If you're ever in Edinburgh, if we can fly out to Edinburgh sometime again, that'd be really good. So that's the condensed 3-minute version of some of the history of the vaults there, and Pip starting the society as a whiskey syndicate, and going from there. Now, these are all cask strength. These are all single cask whiskies. I encourage us all to add water as we go along tonight. And
that's literally all the information you've given us. Like, the only thing I know about these whiskies is the strength.
That's it. So if you look at your little bottles, you can see it says number 1, single cask whiskey. That's correct. Bottled when, cask when, region when, 57.7% aged ? Years. I'm really looking forward to the comments that if Scotty, if you're having a look at the comments on Zoom or on Facebook.
Yep.
What's coming in? If anyone wants to start taking some guesses, we're going to start with number 1, which is in the sweet, fruity, and mellow flavor profile.
Yeah, so I want to say a quick g'day to a few people who are on the Facebooks, to Justin and Kathleen Davies, who says g'day, and a friend of the stream, Mark Westmoreland.
Good to see you, Mark.
From Wolfburn Distillery in Scotland, taking a few pot shots at how they choose the tasting panel for the whiskey roundtable that happens every week. And a g'day to Darren and Rick over on the Society Facebook page as well. So, I mean,
yeah, awesome.
Okay, I have a whiskey in front of me now.
Okay.
I know nothing about it.
Awesome.
I'm going to start nosing it and tasting it. Joey, like, obviously you've done a little bit more of this. When you approach anything blind, whether it's a wine or a whiskey or an apple juice or a water or anything, what are the things we're looking for?
Also, when I'm tasting wines blind and sort of, I guess, how we've learned to do it instantly was not necessarily to look for anything, which is quite interesting. And we normally, when we taste, we use a style of tasting called deductive tasting, which is basically looking for what it's not, essentially. So when doing this with wine, and then I'm sure there are sort of carriers in whiskey as well, but like I sort of mentioned at the start, is it red, is it white, is it rosé, is it sparkling? Okay, bang, then it's not all of those other things. If it's white, it's definitely not a red wine. So it seems very obvious, but I think just mentally, it's quite a cool thing to do, to just like take that off the table. Then we sort of start going down. We take color. I'm sure color can play a factor in whiskeys as well, and spirits in general, but we take color to try and see if there is any oak nuances in the wine, to see if there's any sort of influence on age in the wine, and then immediately go about eliminating what that couldn't be. Particularly looking at, and then going sort of step by step further down, rather than trying to look at a bunch of different things all at the same time. It's just a step-by-step process of going, yeah, okay, I know that it is not this. I know that it is not this. I'm sure there are sort of translations in whiskey when we're talking about sort of oak or age as well. Strength as well, I'm sure, plays a factor. Yep. With wine, vintages play a very big part as well. More vintages, bigger wine, cold vintages, cooler wine, as a general rule, but not always the case. So that's sort of how I approach this sort of things, is not with a blank canvas, but with everything, and then just take things.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. So I mean, first and foremost, and I haven't really got into this properly, but okay, it's a light. It seems like it's on the sweeter side from the nose. So okay, it's not Ardbeg. It's not Lagavulin. It's not Lefroy. You know, those very basic things you can rule out.
We can start with deduction of peat versus unpeated, of course.
Yeah. And so that's probably the ultimate thing for, you know, red versus white in wine is going, okay, well, you know, is it peat or not?
Peat or not.
And again, you know, these days, you know, you look at a distillery like Ben-Riach, can be unpeated or peated, and they do both very different. So it's a little bit different nowadays. But yeah, feel free to put through your comments on here. Now, Matt, you put up. Well, actually, before we do that, this shade of pinky purpley, going by the society flavor profiles. What flavor profile is the panel putting this in?
They're putting it in the sweet, fruity, and mellow.
Sweet, okay, as on the screen there.
Yeah, straight away in the sweet, fruity, and mellow, number one. And I think that's a very apt. I think that's a very apt flavor profile for this one.
I think this might actually, maybe it's you know, my first whiskey today just needs maybe a touch of water, just to open up a little bit.
It will appreciate a drop of water. This one, I think, just a little bit. Don't go overboard. You can't add it. You can't take it out again.
Yeah.
When I was nosing this, I got sort of a bit like mango jam, or sorry, like in that case, like marmalade, mango juice, fairy floss notes. So that might give you an indicator into some of the flavor profiles going on in here.
There's some great comments coming through on the Zoom chat here. Joel Bradbury was going with the sweet, fruity, and mellow. Yep, said better, and that's he said put Ben Riach in there almost after I said it straight away. But that's there's a huge power of perception. 100%. I probably shouldn't have done that. I'm going to refrain from that because I have no idea. Paul Leyland's looking at Linkwood. Dan Mathers said, you know, that vanilla, mango, sweet. Joel comes up with coconut again. So yeah, that vanilla coconutty thing I can certainly see.
I would go down to saying it's very light in colour.
Yeah.
In comparison to a lot of the whiskies that we see.
Well, I mean, and I just want to make a point on Joe's remark there. It is light in colour. And I just like to hammer home the point that the society never ever adds any E150 and never adds any artificial colouring to our whiskies. They're all non-chill filtered, as Alan at Queen Street used to say. We get a cask and we tip the cask upside down and fill bottles from the cask. That's what these whiskeys are. Sorry.
On the topic of color, there, I'd say if this is a lighter whiskey, or if you come across lighter whiskey, could you then eliminate the possibility of extended sherry cask matured whiskies and that kind of thing?
You can, but I think it's a dangerous game to play because I've had 10, 15-year-old whiskies that have looked like Sauvignon Blanc straw color, and 3-year-old New World whiskies that have been dark as Coke. In virgin oak and not necessarily even sherry cask. So it is a little bit. It's a bit of a dangerous game to play. It's not as important as it is in wine. But I mean, you were talking about, mentioned their New World and Old World. I think that's sort of. I think there is a difference between, a Scotch whiskey, or like an Old World producing country, as opposed to a New World, where if you are making whiskey from a distillery and you've just started that distillery, whether that's in England or Australia or somewhere in Asia or America or wherever, you're thinking potentially about smaller casks that have a lot of things to say earlier, or you're thinking about maybe fermentation, playing with that so that you have lots of really fruity new make spirits, so that comes to the fore quicker. For me, I think this is actually that older worldy. I think it's Scotch. I think it's from Scotland, because I think it's probably like it tastes. I can still get that spirit character coming through. It's fruity, but it's not that big tropical fruit that I think you would get from playing with weird yeasts and long fermentation. So I think it's somewhere between sort of like 6 and 10 years. I'm getting a lot of that. It's very clean, and the texture is really. I love the texture on this. That's
how good is the mouthfeel on that whiskey? I was just about to say it's almost. It's like tropical fruit juice, and there's a bit of waxiness to it. There's a bit of like waxed paper.
Yeah. Joel asked a very good question. All of these Scotch whiskies are some of them world distilleries? We have no idea. Matt knows. I have no idea, but we do know the society, even though it's called the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, has bottled whiskies from. You haven't done an English one yet, have you, Danny?
We've done a few English ones, yeah.
I've done English, but then all through Asia. You've done. You said there's Indian, Taiwanese, Japanese,
Welsh, Irish,
English. Have you done American single malt?
Yes, we've done 140.1 and 140.2.
Yeah, so And a shout out to Chris on the Facebook as well, who's really looking forward to this. His father-in-law is a big member, and his mum lives in New Haven, 5 minutes from the vaults. So,
lucky stuff.
So that's when I get kicked out of the vault, I can come and stay at your mum's place, hopefully, Chris.
Well, shall I do the reveal?
Well, no, there's a few more coming through. I think
Okay.
I don't know, but I think that beeswaxy sort of texture, or that note I'm getting.
The mouthfeel is outstanding. I'm blown away by that.
And Joel, that's what we're saying. You meant to know. We don't know. I have no idea where these whiskies, but they could have come from any swathe of the. So I don't know whether these are yet to be released or previously released. It could be anything. Dan Mathers and Dennis are both doubling down on Clynelish here, which I would think is quite a good on that, based on that mouthfeel and the fact that I think it's old world and it's spirit forward, and it has fruit, but it's not that big. I need a whiskey out in 5 years, so I'm going to ferment for 100 hours type thing.
We've talked about the mouthfeel a little bit, and like that mentioned wax paper and stuff like that. What is it that gives it that characteristic in whiskey production?
That's
good
well, in the case of this distillery, it's a mixture of their fermentation and also the shape and size of their stills.
Okay.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with the shape and size of their stills, and in some cases, if you ask when a certain distillery gives off a certain flavor profile, sometimes you ask even the distillers there, how do you get that, say, nutty aroma in your spirit? And their answer is, we don't really know. Like they know that they've got it and they know not to mess with it to get rid of it. But sometimes they don't really know. And sometimes they do, but it's yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like you can, what we talked about a lot last night, it's barley, in this case, they're all single malts, I think. So I think they're all single malts, but I think they just say single cask, so they might not be, but yeah, we don't know. But malted barley, yeast, water. That's all that's in it. So then you've got like thyme and copper and oak to create all these different flavors. So there's a million ways to get to the same answer, and sometimes you don't know that combination. But the more I open this up, the more rich honey notes I get. I think that sort of marmalade-y thing. So I might agree with Dennis and Daniel on this one, and if and say Clynelish.
Well, let's have a look, shall we? I realize that is that coming through? Can we see that?
Yep.
Fantastic. So like I said, some marmalade notes, some mango juice, some fairy floss were some of my notes that I initially got off this. There's the distillery with a bit of bad Photoshop effort to try and hide the name. But as many people have said it already, that's the distillery. It's actually from there. On that previous question about how does it get those flavor elements, that's what the stillhouse looks like at Distillery 26. And it's they're quite unique stills. They're quite traditional in some ways, but quite thick in the middle, unlike some. And I've lost a slide here. That's okay. It is it's 26.147. I'm gonna have to. Why has that happened? That's really frustrating. Okay, 26.147. You have to take my word for that one.
So that means in society terms, it's the 26th distillery that the society bottled, and was it 147? Was it?
Yep. And
so it's the 147th cask from that distillery that's been bottled. That's how that's going to go. So I mean, Clynelish, who people may not be familiar with, the distillery is owned by Diageo. Is a distillery famous for being built by independent bottlers. The spirit, that waxy sort of texture, that honey is great in a blend to build upon. And 8 years old, is that correct?
Yep. We're looking at it there. So
that was, we might be getting a bit better at this than we thought. It's very highly prized by blenders. The independent bottlers, 20, 30 years ago, were starting to get hold of it and, release it, and, whiskey nerds fell in love with it. And so now it's actually very highly sought after. But Diageo do use it for a lot of their blends as well to give that mouthfeel and texture in blends. But yeah, I think
it's one of the more desirable malts now as a dressing malt for blenders, and it's also it's quite desirable to independent bottlers as well, of course. But this is kind of exciting for us. This is a global gathering cask called So Many Colors in a Rainbow. Orange marmalade, lemons washed up on a yellow sandy beach, pink cherry blossom and red berry squash using sarsaparilla, diluted. So tasty. It is an 8-year-old sweet fruity mellow. It is exclusive to Australia. I've got the whole cask, and it's in September outturn.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I think I like that comment on the tasting note on the bottle there, diluted. I was actually struggling with that a little bit. Maybe my first whiskey of the night. Once I added that bit of water, it became, particularly that honey came through, and I was like, okay, I'm starting to get this now. Initially, this is going to be a very long night. So I'm going, okay, I'm not getting anything from this.
But yeah, I get that nuttiness as well.
Yeah,
that came out of nowhere. I think it was sort of clouded by the initial fruit without the water, and then like you said, it really
water really opened that one up.
And actually, Matt, that's a very good choice to go first. So well done on that, because I think Clynelish, there's very few distilleries that taste like Clynelish. So if you know that it's going to have a bit of fruit and then particularly honey and waxy, that beeswaxy, candle waxy sort of texture, if you know those two things or three things, if it's in your glass, chances are it's going to be a Clynelish.
Yeah.
So but if you don't, again, if you've not come across a Clynelish before and you don't know those things, then there's no way you're going to pick it. So it's just sort of like whittling away from whatever. And a quick g'day to Daniel out in Dubbo, tuning in on the Facebook, and Caleb as well. I believe Caleb is a society member.
Yes.
Already. Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay. I'm enjoying that. So September outturn.
Yeah, that's in next week's September outturn. It's malt of the month for our global gathering, and it's a second fill bourbon barrel, and we've got 198 bottles, 199, whatever it says, and we're looking forward to that. But we finally got a huge allocation of a malt of the month for gathering.
What is the global gathering?
So it started last year. It started in 2019 as a series of events around the country. We are in every state, of course, but we're also around the world. But in Australia, we've got a great state ambassador working in each state. And the gathering it's sort of like a callback to sort of ancient, it's like a proper Gaelic translation of just the coming together of members and people coming together and enjoying whiskey together. And so last year we held a gathering event in each city with some smaller ones as well in Melbourne and Sydney. This year, much like Whiskey Fair, we've taken most of it virtual this year. There's a couple of small events happening in Canberra, Brisbane, Hobart, and maybe Sydney. But the rest will be, I say maybe Sydney, depending on restrictions and all that. But yes, this year it's going online, and it's a chance for us to get together, bottle some special casks for the gathering like that one and a couple of others, and offer them up to members in September. So why not?
Excellent.
Yeah.
The one I love about this as well, I think Dan Mathers has pointed out, that's a really bloody good whiskey. So all things aside, whether I got close or not, it was just good to
it's what I like to. That's the kind of whiskey I'd be gleefully sharing around, kind of thing. It's not one that it does. It's just one. It's a really nice drinker. It doesn't
gleefully sharing, not reluctantly sharing.
Gleefully sharing.
Gleefully
sharing. No, and I think it's. If I'm being honest, I know I'm probably biased, but I think it's a good price on it. Well, it's going to be $159 in outturn.
That's very good for a single cask strength Clynelish.
Yes.
All righty.
Shall we?
And a g'day to Chris, loving himself the Clynelish, and I think it is a very cult distillery these days. But g'day to Ben Baranow as well. Watching.
G'day Ben.
So number two. Now we are in a different flavour profile, so spicy and sweet. All right, Joey. Well, in this case, Joey, do you want to take me through what you get straight away, and then I'll try and get, because you tend to have a better palate than I do and better tasting notes. So
for wine.
Well, you tell me what you get, and then I'll see if I can sort of whittle that down from maybe a little bit more knowledge of distilleries.
All right. Yeah. Well, so it is already like instantly a notably darker color. Just one pouring.
We're just going to throw up some of the whilst you're going on that, Joel, throw up some of the flavor elements I got off this as well.
I mean, maybe coming from the first one, but oak. I got a lot more oak on this than I did on the first one.
Yeah, oak. I get like a wood shaving type character towards it. I always get like a bit of metallic sort of like gunmetal type thing in there.
I was just looking at it as I was nosing it, and I was like, "Gee, that's bright red."
Yeah.
But my mouse was underneath the glass, and I was like, "Yeah."
But yeah, really dark. Lots of like forest floor, almost like a cooked oyster, like a a real smoky sort of savoury element towards it.
Yeah.
A little bit of mushroom.
One thing that I'm like when you say
Sweet
forest
as well.
floor, you know those muesli bars. You used to get like the choc chip ones or the white chocolate, and then you get like the forest fruit ones.
Yeah.
That undisclosed mixed berry thing. No one knows what berries were harmed in the making of that. But yeah, so 100% that like blackberry raspberry thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, on the first one, the Clone Leash, it felt like a youngish but an old world whiskey. This feels a little bit more modern. Okay. I feel like it's the cask has had a lot more influence. It could still be Scotch, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was New Worldy.
And what is the New World? Like, is there a line in the New World that you kind of draw? I mean, in wine, we always talk Old World, New World, as in Europe, Central Europe, that kind of thing for Old World, and then sort of South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, America, is that sort of New World winemaking?
It's not really defined in whiskey, and because everyone makes their own styles of whiskey. But say we're talking about single malt, I think Old World would be Scotland and Ireland, and everywhere else would be New World. So that includes your France, your South Africa, includes even America, even though they're an old world producing country, but the single malt is very new for them. Would you agree with that, Matt?
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I was wondering what else could be classified as old world in that statement, and I don't know if anything else could be. Yeah,
for single malt, particularly for mixed grains, you do get some old world stuff from other countries, particularly America, obviously with bourbon and rye and that sort of thing.
But I do wonder how you'd classify that, especially when in countries like Scotland, you've now got distilleries like Wolfburn and Ballindalloch and stuff. So they're very much contemporary distilleries in the country that they're in. And same with Ireland, as we know, with the likes of Waterford and Blackwater Distillery.
So it's almost a new world producing method or ethos. It's a cultural terroir rather than a physical one. This one's throwing me a little bit.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of what it could be Scottish-wise, because I'm really hoping it's Scottish, because if I say it's not Scottish, that makes it a lot harder. But I like if... And I think this is the other thing, you can get inside your own head. And I want to talk a little about the Champs as well, which should have happened this year, which is a blind tasting event that the Society holds. But I am famous for getting in my head and thinking out. So like I'm trying to put this back in Scotland because I'm thinking it's a Scotch Malt Whisky Society, even though they've bottled stuff from outside, this to me, tastes outside that. But would he do that, or would he go 5 scotches? So I'm trying to think of like what Matt would do rather than what's in the glass.
I'll never tell you.
I can't count the amount of times I've blind tasted wines and left kicking myself after nailing it on the first thought and then going back and changing it. And then sort of flipping it around and reversing. Oh no, maybe it's not that. So go with your gut thing is really important.
One of the most important rules, and if anyone played footy as a kid, particularly Aussie rules, is you play the ball, not the man. And right now, I'm trying to play Matt Bailey instead of what's in my glass. So I need to get out of that. Play the ball.
Good luck.
Man.
Yeah, good luck.
So, Dan Mathers,
look at it's 65.2% as well. I just want to make that known.
Also, I didn't actually look at that. So that's very high. So it either would be a very young Scotch, because normally they're filling at 63.5. So very few Scotch whiskies go up. So that actually validates if that's 65. Okay, I'm going to throw Scotland away now, because the vast majority fill at 63.5 and they tend to go down. Very few go up. So I'm actually thinking somewhere in Asia for this. Yes, or America, actually, or America.
American.
I would probably lean towards America. So Dan Mather said honey roasted almonds, and that roasty note I do get. There could be an element of virgin oak, which could give that savoury smoky note, which American do play with virgin oak a lot in their single malts. He says lots of candied duck fruits, mocha, first fill sherry. No idea on this. If Scottish, say Glentockers. Dan Mathers said, I think he's going to America. Sarah says, thinking it could be American. Manhattan cherry-like nose. Dennis is going Scotland for the big PX finish. Raph throwing a bit of a curveball in there, saying Taiwan.
I like that. I like the Taiwan note, actually.
John Jarvis, Highlands.
Couldn't possibly say.
Yeah. It could be Highlands. I mean, Highlands is an interesting region in Scotland because it's quite big. And there's lots of different whiskies they make in the Highlands. Seamus saying, gave away for me there. Don't know what that means. on the Facebook there. Sorry, someone just tried to group chat me. Sachet tomorrow, mate, not right now. Gave away for me there, mate. I don't know what that means, Seamus. Dennis is going back to space. I'm going A on the nose, and I was on the fence, but the 65% thing for me, I'm leaving Scotland behind.
Does everyone agree? It very aptly falls into the spicy and sweet throat?
Well, yeah.
It is spicy. It's got that sort of, I think Dennis said PX sort of spice going on there, a bit of a PX finish, if you like.
Whiskey is my jam, says Distillery 6. Now, if you're not a society member, when you become a society member, you'll notice some people memorize the actual the code numbers. They sit at home, and before they go to bed, they read it all the time. I know some people that have the distillery codes tattooed on their back. That's something that's happened for the society members.
We did have a society member who had a particular cask code and the bottle tattooed on his left calf, which I thought was pretty dedicated.
Distillery 6, I don't know what that is.
Well, that would be a Macduff.
That would be a Macduff. And Whiskey's My Jam says he reckons he might have tried this particular whiskey earlier this week, which could be interesting. Macduff for me is very floral. It's very English garden, very rose.
But you know that one of the things we love to do at the Society is challenge convention.
Yeah.
To take whiskies that are outside of the core style, the core house style of these distilleries, and have things that are definitely outside of the norm, if you like. Yeah. So I'm going to go across one slide, which was misplaced before, but that was the gathering cover for our September outturn. But the next slide is going to be the first clue as to which distillery it is.
Thanks, mate. Yeah,
you're very welcome.
Good on you.
That's the front wall of the distillery, so that can give you a clue as to it is fairly modern compared to. It doesn't look like Strathisla. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Can we confirm, or I don't know how people out there are thinking, but can we confirm or deny whether this is Scottish or not?
Would you like me to say?
I think we're
made your call.
Well, I think it's something American. I don't know. I think it's just got that big.
Does that look American?
No, it doesn't. That doesn't look American. It does look very un-American.
Yeah.
But like the behind the building, that looks like a very Scottish grey day.
Or something like that.
Yeah. I'd look. Maybe I might lean on what Ref said. Something. It's not Japanese. I'm pretty confident of that. I don't think it's.
So that building definitely isn't in Hokkaido.
Sorry.
That building definitely isn't that building's definitely not in Hokkaido.
Yes.
Is that what we're saying?
Well, I was, but yeah.
Okay.
He's going. So Whiskey's My Jam's doubling down on Macduff, which could be interesting because again, if that's the case, then that's a great instance of I've never had a Macduff that tasted like this. So like if this is Macduff, then that's part of the game in saying, okay, I've never experienced a Macduff that tastes like this. So it doesn't matter how long I sat with this, I would never have picked Macduff.
Yeah.
All right, here comes the reveal. Whiskey is My Jam. You're sometimes just too good. There is indeed Macduff Distillery, which is what the whiskey we're drinking right now. I'll show you that bottle in just a moment, but I really want to show what the still room looks like here. Look at those line arms. Look at the top of the necks on those stills. This is probably one of the strangest distilleries in Scotland in many ways. It produces a very often quite a heavy spirit character off the amount of copper contact it gets from those really strange long sort of U-shape arms that come off those stills, and they're very squat, fat stills as well. So at the base, and so they are quite massive, and they often give that's the character that it comes off that distillery. But as Scotty said, you often get these like a floral aroma, and off Macduff. In this case, it's not so floral. It's got a lot of spice and sweetness in it, and some of those tastiness I showed before, like Jamon Serrano, black olives, dark chocolate, and that's at the back of Macduff with a lot of sherry casks waiting to be filled. They do a lot of sherry cask maturation there, and this is cask 6.39, a belter of a dram, and I think it's 65.2%. That's a very apt description of this whiskey.
So yeah, fascinating. And I do apologize to everyone because the power of deception is very strong. And I dragged everyone about as far as possible away as what it actually was. It's just like you wouldn't follow me down a dark alley. Don't follow me down tasting notes.
So in this case, it was in an ex Oloroso butt, and then had an additional maturation in a first fill XPX. So Dennis, who said PX finish, well done. That's unbelievably good perception going on there. And Mark, you are bang on the money.
Yeah, that's really interesting because like some of the elements I was picking out, that younger, that big cask influence. Yes, it was 7 years old. So it was on the younger end. So there's certain things that we were picking up on. We were just placing them in the wrong. I was writing off things that I probably shouldn't be writing off.
Yeah.
I mean, that just goes to show that I need to drink a little bit more Macduff.
Yeah. Well,
very interesting. That was a good one. I like that. It was very curveball. I'm
all
surprised.
5 whiskeys. There was some effort gone into picking these 5, obviously, because it was like really wanted to make sure they were 5 very diverse and unique drams. Now, whilst we're just in between those first 2, if Scotty doesn't mind, I just want to show a couple of things that we do differently at the Society.
Go for it.
There's Dr. Ian Burrell, who looks after some of the rum paneling and whiskey paneling for us at the Society. And he's sitting there with his tasting notebook and some samples in front of him and a bit of wall of whiskey behind him. We have an expert tasting panel at the SMWS. That's one of the things that makes us completely different from, I guess, independent bottlers. We don't really call ourselves an independent bottler. It's more of a whiskey club that sources direct from distilleries and direct from distillery owners on source of casks because of our coding system, which I'll get to. And we have a close relationship as well with the SWRI, which is the Scotch Whisky Research Institute. There's some of the panel work going on at the SWRI with color perception and blue glassware and individual booths. It gets very, very nerdy and technical. That's Ewan Campbell on the right there. I don't know who's on the left. I'm sorry. I assume she works at the SWRI, but that's Ewan, who works on our team at SMWS, who's involved in picking out floors, aromas, and working on a whole range of different single casks every single month, so that they reach a certain minimum score. They go through all sorts of rigorous panel training every month as well. So this is quite this gets quite scientific, and it gets quite nerdy about picking these things out, so that our members can always rely on what they're picking out of an outturn to be already of a set quality, rather than sort of something that might be bottled from a broker that has been sold on a few times. This is most of the time picked out directly from distillery or distillery owners in terms of casks that we're able to bottle. And the only way we're able to do that is by not listing the distillery name on the bottle. So by not having the name on the bottle, the distilleries love us because we're not competing with their brand. We're not going, oh, well, we're going to bottle, as we said before, something like, an Ardbeg, and we're going to put the word Ardbeg on the bottle. They're going to say, well, that's going to confuse consumers and detract from our brand. So we just say it's got a code instead. And of course, that's there you go, SWRI flavor wheel, which is the official flavor wheel, which you can find online, for our, which we base the flavor profiles off, and then add to our bottles as they get past panel. So yeah, there you go. That was just sort of one of the things that makes us different at the Society is our tasting panel and the amount of work that goes into bottling things that then our members end up getting to enjoy. So I think we might, we're up to maybe number 3.
Number 3, and I want to shout out to a couple of people on the Facebook there. Seamus, who I think, like me, didn't recognise that wall, but he did note that that wall is the most Scottish wall I've ever seen, which is fair play. But Ben Baranow did pick the wall. He said, "I know that wall." So yeah, I mean, yeah, awesome. That's right. I don't think I've seen too many pictures of Macduff Distillery, to be honest.
There's a good reason for that.
Yeah. All right, so number 3. So we've got a different colour again, the sort of teal bluey thing.
Yep, that's the juicy oak and vanilla.
Juicy oak.
Yep, so juicy oak and vanilla.
Juicy oak.
Yeah, well, juicy, oak, maybe.
57.9%. So did we find out? Sorry, again, just to go rewind a little bit, 65% on the previous one.
Yeah.
How did we get there? Did Macduff fill at particularly high level, or?
They do fill high, but also some. It's not the steadfast rule of casks dropping in proof over time is not steadfast. It's it's more sort of the norm rather than the exception. And so we do often see casks rising in proof. And also sometimes it might be a case of where that cask is maturing in Scotland versus where it was distilled.
Yeah. So, and you know, potentially warehouses have changed in the last, you know, sort of 50 years quite dramatically. Could have been on level 10 of somewhere you're really high up and seeing big fluctuations as well.
Yeah.
It's okay. Got that oak.
So in juicy oak and vanilla, I mean, it's no longer in that territory of sort of, big tropical fruits or those, immediate spices that you get. It's a different kind of. I mean, there are spices in there, but it's a different kind. And so when I'm nosing this, I'm getting things like Campbell's beef broth, maybe even some, like I say, dried herbs, even a hint of Marmite and dried apricots. So we're getting it's a very savory dram, this one. And when I first nosed it, I absolutely loved it. But then again, I do quite enjoy a lot of what I taste from this code. So
I like definitely the dried herbs thing. You know, one of my favorite distilleries in the world is Linkwood, and I love it for that grassiness, which is seen some other distilleries as well. So I go looking for that, and it's not that. It is a dry herbal thing that has that same aroma profile, but in a different world.
Yeah, I think you immediately get that quite vegetal aroma punching out there straight away. Wasco says very mild compared to the previous drams. Yeah, I think there's a little bit more age on this. I'm thinking initially Scotland. Again, don't listen to me, but that's just what I'm going through as we've seen so far. I'm thinking 12 to 15 years.
Okay.
It's just, and when I say that, what I mean by that is it's a bit more mellow. You know, it's the cask isn't as big. You know, what Dennis was picking out, like that PX finish, that big oak influence. It's not as loud, but the spirit is softer. It's more mellow. So,
oh wow.
But you're very aromatic.
Very aromatic dram, like really sort of like dried herbs, and like I honestly get like a beef bone broth, like a really sort of savory note in this one that I love, and I actually really like that in a whiskey. I get that out of some Campbelltown whiskeys. I get that out of some Highland whiskeys, but especially Campbelltown. But I do get this like I say, this brothy note out of some whiskeys, and I love it. And I think juicy oak and vanilla is very apt for this description. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have any of those sweet, fruity, and mellow notes. It doesn't have the young and sprightly, spirit-forward notes.
One trick that I've seen used a couple of times, but it's actually it comes out of tequila. A lot of people do this is when you're nosing, and you hold your glass on sort of like a 45, 35 degree angle, and you nose at the top of the rim, at the middle, and then at the bottom, and you actually get different volatiles, and it can change. And so doing that on this one.
Joe, how does that work compared to wine? Is there any sort of techniques in wine where you're nosing things at different points in the glass?
Not so much that I've seen. There's definitely an element of the aeration, which I think we're probably all doing at the moment, which is just really trying to get some air through. Where wines can taste completely different from being just poured, especially older wines stored under cork or screw cap. They will taste dramatically different from when they're first poured to 15, 20 minutes, or if they've got a bit of air in them. And that we know that from decanting wines as well. I haven't seen too much in the way of difference, like aroma levels or anything like that. But I think we're talking about 60, well, we're talking sort of between 55, 65% here, where wines will probably be 11 to 14.
Yep.
So in wine, I think you find you really need to chase a lot of aromas and sort of try and pick it apart. And I think especially with this and the last one, it comes to you straight away.
Yeah.
This one's throwing me a bit. I'm getting my head around it. So now I'm getting to the point I'm starting to cut things out. So what do we know it's not? It's not a big peat bomb. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's from an island as well. It doesn't have any sort of, I think it's not particularly coastal. So let's look further inland. It's big, it's bold, it's robust, it's a big spirit. So I'm ruling out the lowlands. I'm thinking highlands at some point. Just looking at some of the comments here on the Facebook, Liam says could smell number 3 all day. Richard throws Ben Romack in there. Lovely, big, bold, grassy back end. Dennis goes definitely bourbon, Speyside. Dan Mathers goes very Moorish, probably 15-year-olds, refill sherry, so chewy. Dale Ewan, Ben Rinners. quite close hint of water opens up the aromatics. Gerald Bradbury throws in the potential of grain. I'm going to throw something else in there. Like I like the first hint. I was like, okay, maybe either a bourbon cask, but I'm thinking maybe refill sherry, even wine cask, because there's a real sweetness in there.
Yeah,
it's not immediate, but underneath there's like a real confectionery style sweetness, which you do get. And I'm not thinking, Pinot Noir or something, but like a white wine cask or something maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a good guess.
But yeah, I would say sort of like, Rees Group. I don't know if that's one person or a whole group. If you've got the whole Rees Group company sitting behind you, that's cheating, by the way. But they sell, I smell wine. I think, that refill, like second fill sherry, or maybe like a white wine cask, like a Moscatel or something like that, like a sweet wine.
I don't get as much sweetness as you do. I think out of those comments, you're saying there's like a lot of sweet wine characteristics, and I don't get that immediately. I get, like I say,
it's buried. It's underneath that herbiness.
Definitely getting the sort of back to mid palate. There's almost like that honey nectar kind of note in there.
Yeah.
But that nose is still just all vegetal, all savory. There's that sort of salty brininess in there.
You get a bit of brininess?
I get a little bit of brininess on the nose.
A bit of brine, yeah.
So okay, maybe I need to go and push back out to the coast a little bit then.
That's predominantly a coastal thing?
No, not necessarily, but I'm being making general statements here. Yeah. But like you do see it in certain old Pultneys. We saw it on Tuesday night with Ardnamurchan and their cask sample and their Spirit AD and what they're talking about. They were talking a lot about that sort of thing. That briny element can come in from there. I think this is very challenging. A few people are saying that. I think that as well, because it's a great dram, but there's nothing that's jumping out for me in my knowledge bank of what I associate with certain distilleries as this could fit. I think there's still like 10 or 15 distilleries that I think that this could potentially be from. But I'm thinking a Highlander. You know what? And again, there's a lot of distilleries that I haven't.
You're sticking with Scotland though for this one.
Oh yeah, Scotland definitely. Yeah. And this is not a guess. So I haven't had a Longmorn in ages, Bailey. What does Longmorn taste like?
Well, I'd argue that Longmorn is far oilier.
Okay.
Yeah. Longmorn often carries a lot of sort of like rich oils across the spirit, which I love. I don't think this is a Longmorn either. In fact, I know it's not a Longmorn. So
all right, that's one down.
Cross that one out.
Seamus on the Facebook says 42 unpeated, which would refer to distillery number 42.
Yep.
I don't have the society codes tattooed on my body like some other people do.
It is not an unpeated 42, but that is a good guess. It does almost have that note to it, doesn't it?
What is 42? Are you allowed to say?
That'd be Tobermory.
Tobermory. Okay. Yeah.
I get where he's coming from.
Yep. Glenn Murray says, Mike, whiskey is my jam, distillery number 3.
Ooh.
What's that? What's 3?
That's Bamore.
Yeah, okay.
A juicy oak and vanilla Bamore. That'd be interesting. If it was that. Okay. Shall we?
Hold on. Wait.
All right. I don't want to rush
you were very, and this is, I'm starting to play the man, not the ball at the moment. You were very, very distinct on asking me whether I was convinced this was Scotland.
Well, no. Well, okay. Well, you've got to play the ball, not the man. You know this. You were saying it, so.
Could this? I haven't even thought about not Scotland on this. Could this be not from Scotland?
Does that bring it back to that old world, new world discussion?
Yeah. I think if this is not from Scotland, I would be very, very impressed, because I think the complexity and the development of that nose, I'm thinking 12 to 15 years old. If they've achieved that in a younger way from somewhere else apart from Scotland, I'd be very impressed. But
so 12 to 15 Scottish whiskey. Joe, what's your take?
Well, I'm here purely for tasting notes. I can only name about 6 distilleries.
No, but like, how old do you think it is?
I think I'm with Scotty. I think it's sort of, to me, I if I had to lean either way, I'd actually maybe go a little bit younger.
Okay.
So I think it, I'm not too well versed on whiskey tasting notes and that sort of thing, but it does seem to me have a bit of vibrancy and a bit of energy towards it. And that sort of plays into that youthfulness that I taste in whiskeys that are maybe a little bit younger. So I could go 8 to 10.
8 to 10. Robert says Japan. Phil Brooks agrees with you. He goes younger with John Jarvis from down at the Hobart Distillery. So g'day to everyone, Tasmania. I think there's a few people from the Sullivan's Cove crew tuning in tonight as well. Less than 10. So again, don't go by me, because as we've known,
all right,
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay, shall we? I'll reveal the teaser slide of the distillery if anyone can guess it straight off the bat. Very Scottish.
Yes, okay. I think I know what that is. Yeah, definitely Scotland.
Scotland.
And then we'll add the distillery name to the top of the top there in the brickwork of Blair Athol Distillery.
Yeah.
And what we're tasting here is a distillery that is fascinating in its spirit quality, and you can have a look at the very crammed still room there at Blair Athol. It's a very traditional distillery, though, very old school in its construction. Hasn't had many upgrades over the years. I think it's a beautiful distillery, and I think they make some remarkable whiskey. But the reason why this whiskey in particular, actually, before I get to that, one of my favorite things about Blair Athol is that they've used an old washback there and they've cut the copper out to create a bar. The bartender stands inside the washback to serve whiskey, which is just very cool. It's very Scottish. We are tasting 68.38 Butcher Shop Quartet, a big, complicated, earthy, muscular, and beefy dram. Charred fruits, cured meats, musty old wines, and herbal infusions in unexpected harmony. Now, the reason why you probably thought it was much older whiskey, it's a recharred hogshead. And I just want to touch on that point really briefly. Distilleries, for the longest time, were primarily serving for blenders. They were primarily going into blends, including Blair Athol Distillery. And it's only in recent years, and I say recent, I mean, the society was buying casks of Blair Athol as a single malt before Blair Athol releasing a single malt, and they still don't have a core range at all. And these are casks that this is a distillery, that needed to find its footing as a single malt. And so a lot of what we see sometimes now are recharred hoggies and recharred barrels, which breathe a whole new life into the spirit. And I think it's actually a really cool thing, because it takes these spirits and you can find this really charry, meaty, beefy spirit quality amped up through a rechar process. And in this case, I think it's a remarkable whiskey, that one. It's like I say, it's complicated, earthy, and muscular. It's a fun whiskey. So,
yeah, I mean, again, that's what I was sort of saying. It could be any one of 10 to 15 distilleries. It was certainly that sort of workhorse type distillery that I probably don't have enough of in my memory bank to know. And Blair Athol certainly fits that bill. I went a little bit older, and certainly like that sweetness. I was picking up maybe a little bit too much, I think, of that wine cask. But yeah, looks good. I think, judging by Mark and Darren on the Society Facebook and people on the Oak Person in the Zoom, I think that was really tempered. That was a really cool one. And I think it was, if we had averaged everyone's sort of opinions, we would have got pretty close to the specs, even if no one would have guessed the distillery. And if you're guessing Blair Athol's single cask blind, you are, whatever you're doing, you're in the wrong game. Get involved.
You're in the wrong profession if you can guess Blair Athol single casks. Yeah,
that's it. Lovely whiskey, lovely whiskey. Is this coming out? Has it been? What's the go with this one?
We've only got a very small number on hand actually of this one, so if any members want to jump on that one, they know how to go about that. They can obviously call Susie, or they can shoot me a message and we can work something out. But some of these casks that I'm featuring tonight may never get featured again, or may never make their way to an outturn. So, yeah.
And like as Phil Brooks says, and things, never had a Blair Athol before, which I think a lot of people potentially have never had a Blair Athol.
Yeah.
It's fallen on a long time.
No, yeah. I'm trying to think of the last one I did. It might have been the Flora and Fauna series, which would have been 3 years ago.
That's going back a while, isn't it?
Yeah, I did have a bottle knocking around for a while though, but great distillery. Another good choice, and I love that. Mark, with what you chose there, it's not just the distillery. It was the age. It was a recharred hogshead. All those things.
Yeah.
Were elements that were defining what we were trying to pick out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It carried a lot of character, that spirit, and it's easy to see why that could be a 12 to 15-year-old whiskey with the cask interaction that spirit's had. It's picked up a lot of complexity, and this is almost a good example to say, well, don't be defined by the age on the label.
Yeah, 100%. And another good example of that style, the method of tasting you were talking about at the start, which Darren on the Facebook says calls the Sherlock Holmes style. If you eliminate everything, it's not. You look with what it is.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah, absolutely.
Problem with that one, it could have been a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just trying to basically trying to get wrong less.
Yeah. Story of my life.
Yeah.
Take it to America. All righty. Are we moving on to what are we up to? 4?
Yeah, I had a quick sort of bit here just about the coding system just to clear things up.
Oh, yes, that'd be good.
Because we sort of touched on this before, and it was we had, so you can see on each label they've all got a code. We just went from 68 68.38 Butcher Shop Quartet. They've all got a code and a name, and the name is reminiscent of what we expect in the flavors. I think a Butcher Shop Quartet is a really cool name for that whiskey. It's like there's a quartet of flavors happening in that, and it's got a meaty, gamey sort of flavor to it. We give each of the whiskeys a name. A thigh slapping dram was one of those. In this case, it was a whiskey that came out earlier this year. The kind of whiskey that makes you slap your thigh and go, "Wow, how good is that?" So that's Distillery 33 in this case. Cask 138. That means that it's the 138th cask from Distillery 33 that we've bottled at the Society. And the coding system works in the way that the first number is the distillery, second number is the panel past code. We may have been offered up 300 casks from this distillery, 1,000 casks, but I know that the panel have passed 138. In the case of Distillery 33, we've got a close special relationship with them because they used to own the Society up until 2015, but times have changed. So in this case, it was, the 138th cask. What that does, it protects us against competing against their brand. And we're not sort of like, we need to, they're only going to supply us with subpar spirit if we have to print their name on it, because they're going to say, well, it's either stuff they've sold to brokers. This is a direct relationship where we can say, we're not printing the name of the distillery. Yes, it's the worst kept secret, but that's what it is. And then it keeps the focus on flavor rather than brand. We're only interested in what's inside the bottle. We're only interested in what members actually get to enjoy from these whiskeys like we are tonight. And that's the fact that we are able to do these 5 tonight completely blind is super exciting. And it means that we're focusing on the flavor of each whiskey and each of the flavor profiles combined. So I hope that clears up some of the reason why we use a coding system. We're not competing with distilleries, and we're actually able to keep the focus on the flavor of the bottle rather than the brand of it.
And there is an element now of, people do know the distillery codes off by heart or the ways to find it. But there was a time when they were honestly secret. And you probably needed to try 10 of a certain number so you could average out. It was like, this must be, I've tried enough that it can only come from one site. But I do love that. I love that that element of it. So even if you are, obviously we're doing it blind tonight. Every Society bottler is essentially a bit of a blind tasting.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic.
So what color is number 4? Where have I put it?
So number 4 is spicy and sweet, which was also number 2.
Yeah. Okay.
This was again a deliberate choice to throw a spanner in the works. Why not? So
the first thing I'm going to say here is, as we've been sort of doing, the first thing I've been looking for in whiskies is it peated or not? As we've been going through, I think this is peated.
Yeah, a little bit of peat on
that. Okay.
Which I probably wasn't expecting from something that said spicy and sweet. It could be oak char as well. If you go to New World, particularly again New World places, a lot of American whiskies. We had the new whiskey from Crafty, Blue 01, completely unpeated, but that super cask that Andrew Young cask he's picked up was very heavily charred. So it's really campfire smoke, no peat. And that's something that I just tried in the last week, so it's fresh in my memory. But it could be potentially that campfire note could be coming from something else. But definitely that Hessian wool thing that you've put up there, Bailey.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've put up some of the tasting notes I got off this whiskey. I got sort of like cut figs, a bit of like caramel fudge, fisherman friends, and yeah, Hessian wool, tarry rope kind of notes. It's not in the peated flavor profile. It's in spicy and sweet, this one. And I picked this out because I thought this was, like I said, there was a fair few iterations of what was going to go in this pack. And this one was picked out because it was quite honestly a proper curveball. It's a spicy and sweet whiskey. It's strange. It's interesting. And it's one that I was really happy to share with you all.
55.5% ABV.
Yep.
Yeah, I like. Okay, I'm talking a lot, so I'm not spending as much time as I probably should be. But just where whiskey is my jam, pops at number 4, potentially New World. So a young Scottish distillery, or a distillery from a younger producing country, or even just a distillery with a new, producing culture and ethos. And I'd say, yeah, potentially not 100% sold on that it is a New World, but certainly wouldn't surprise me at all.
So if you were to go for your 2 initial assumptions of peated and New World, what sort of zone does that take you towards?
Well, they do a lot. Well, England, certainly they're doing peated stuff there. Wales, Penderyn, and there's a couple of stories in Wales now, but Penderyn famously it didn't peat their whiskey because their hybrid still distills to such a level that you would lose all your peat during the process. But they use, ex-Islay peated barrels. So, I mean, that could be an element in this as well. Phil Brooks is disagreeing, says, reckons Scotch. Ralph is looking at Lecheg. Dan Mathers is a young sherry Ardmore. I like that idea, that sort of Highland peat Ardmore.
A sweet Lecheg, I like that.
Sweet Lecheg is a good guess. And Ardmore, Dan Mathers, that's an awesome guess as well. That's amazing.
I love Ardmore, and as soon as you said that, I think, yeah. I haven't tasted
We've had a string of some really good sherried Ardmores through, actually. Some first fill and second fill sherried Ardmores coming through.
I have to say, in the past 10 years of drinking society casks, like infrequently, I don't drink everything from every outturn, but that period of young Bemores from about 5 years ago was excellent. But I reckon consistently Ardmore and probably Mannockmore are my 2 favorite distilleries through society, at least from what I've tried. I haven't tried all of them, but I can't tell you what those numbers are, as I've forgotten, but I'm sure you can Google it. But anything that they come up, I always gravitate to.
66 and 64.
I know. So I'm torn between that first hurdle. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper and actually try this and start thinking about it a bit more.
I thought it was fascinating that this was placed in spicy and sweet flavor profile, because there is obviously an element of there's a hint of peat in there, but it's not overwhelming. It's very much it'd almost be a lightly peated dram, but it falls into spicy and sweet.
Ali says Glen Scotia maybe seems quite coastal on the nose.
Okay, we have had a few spicy and sweet Glen Scotias, so maybe it's a good guess. Very good guess.
The finish is very ashy, like very ashtray, like cigarette ash.
Scotty, that's actually one of the official tasting notes on it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I don't smoke. So maybe that's why, because I know when someone who smokes, I think that's great.
Empty ashtray, freshly emptied ashtray was one of the tasting notes.
Yes, which takes me away from Ardmore, takes me away from Lecheg, because I think Lecheg has a fuller finish. I'm going to gamble a little bit, and again, I've gambled 3 times so far, and I've only got it anywhere near it once. The other times I've been in the wrong countries, let alone the wrong place. But I'm going to go away from Scotland.
Okay.
My gut sort of says something English potentially.
English, okay. Yeah, you know what I'll remark about the palate on this one? If anyone's had a taste already, I haven't added any water yet. It's 55.5%. I wouldn't add too much water. It's already fairly low in proof for cask strength whiskey. I'll say that the palate is just super clean. It's one of like that peat isn't that. I think one of the reasons why you're tending away from Islay, and I'll admit for good reason, is because it doesn't have that super clean. It doesn't have that boggy, damp, wet cardboard, water over rocks kind of notes. It's got that very clean smoke, and it's just on top of the sweetness of the spirit.
And I think it was someone said Lecheg might have been Raf in the chat. Definitely on the nose, but the palate, it's a good way. Yeah. It's too clean.
It's very clean.
Like Lecheg for me is gritty and grungy and some of the dirtiest whiskies. Dennis is doubling down, says it's in Scotland. He's got it pretty right. I think he's got everyone pretty right so far. So maybe instead of following me, you should follow that. Distillery, Joel says a hint of 53. What's 53, Matt?
That's Kalila.
I can definitely on the nose on that one and on the finish as well, actually. And Whiskey is My Jam says 138. I have no idea what that is.
Oh, that's a good guess. Good guess.
Do we know what 138 is?
That would be I'm going to go. I think he means Nantu.
Nantu. Okay, which is Taiwanese. Seamus is sticking with Ardmore on the Society Facebook there, and Cameron is looking at, he throws Japanese into, which I guess will fit into that Taiwanese sort of elegance.
Yeah.
I honestly haven't had a lot of Nantu, so I'm not too sure on that one. Can't say too much because we don't see a huge amount in Australia. And just in general, it's a good point that Darren brings out, that one of the things the Society does is open distilleries that you may not have heard of before or had access to. And he actually now goes looking for distilleries that he potentially never heard of before. I don't want to get a bunch of phone calls tomorrow asking about what Blair Athols have you got? Don't have any. They come and they go.
But just on the flavor elements that I put up on the screen there, does anyone get that sort of like just a hint of like that caramel fudge, the fig, and just a hint of like the Fisherman Friends, like those super powerful mint Fisherman Friends that used to get. I don't know if they even still make them.
Yeah, I get a bit of like a citrus sharpness in there.
Yep.
There's like a bit of like a very like a lime zest that sort of cuts through underneath all that. Well, underneath that little hint of peat.
The focus for us is always on flavor. The focus is always on flavor, and rather than an age statement, rather than anything else. And we bottle every whiskey from 3 to 53 years of age, but the flavor is what's key.
I do get that. I do get that sort of figgy note, but the more I go back to it, the more ashiness I get.
Shall we?
My Jam is going on 138.1, which he quite enjoyed.
That was called All in the Game, and that was a ripper whiskey.
Paul Leyland says, reckons it's a bourbon cask, number 73. We haven't even spoken about what cask this would be, but I think some sort of ex-bourbon or what I would call a minimal intervention cask.
Let the spirit shine, as I say.
Yeah, to take a wine term and thrust it into the whiskey world, minimal intervention.
You can use that. Shall we move on to see where we're up to? So this one falls into the spicy and sweet. There's back to our flavor wheel. I didn't have to even edit the next photograph of what the distillery looks like because you might not recognize the name on it anyway.
Yeah, okay.
The entrance to the visitor center is a giant cask, which I think is just outrageously fantastic in itself. And this is a distillery that we've had a close relationship with at the Society, insofar as our whiskey director has gone over there to pick out these casks, hand pick what's going on with the Society casks here. This is, again, not just picking out through brokers. This is hand picked straight through. This is well done, Mark Teague, Nantu Distillery. I can't believe you picked that. That's an unbelievable pick there, Mark.
Round of applause.
From the Taiwan Liquor and Tobacco Corporation. This is a state-owned distillery. This is just it's the only one that I know of in the world, actually. I can't think of any other distilleries that are owned by the government. This is a state-owned tobacco and liquor company that used to produce plum wines and all sorts of things, and then realized that there's a distillery not far called Cavalan that were producing whiskey, and they're like, well, we can do that as well. And so they started producing whiskey as well. And they named it Omar as their single malt, and it's the Nantu Distillery in Taiwan. I think they produce an unbelievably clean, aromatic peated whiskey. And there's the master distiller. I'm not sure why he's hitting a stave on a cask, but that was his press photo.
That's good. That's very Tim Duckett of him.
That is very Duckett. He's giving those barrels a proper hiding there. And there is second from the left is Kai Ivalo, who's the director of our spirits team, who went over to work with them on procurement and sourcing of great single casks that he could present to panel. So it's a very much a personal relationship with these guys, and it's a distillery I have a soft spot for. I think they do marvelous whiskey. This is 138.5 delicate masculinity in the spicy and sweet Taiwan refill X bourbon. Delicate smoke, rich toffee, brown sugar sweetness meet stereotypically masculine traces of gunpowder, wooden chests, and bacon butties. I don't know that I'd call those things masculine, but I think it's a marvelous dram nonetheless.
Yeah. I think I can count on one hand the amount of Nantu or Omar whiskies I've had. And when it's my job to drink whiskey all day, I can probably say there's some people playing along tonight that have never had a Nantu Omar. But again, proper curveball or googly, as we say in Australia, Matt Bailey. But we were as a group, and again, if we took the average, we were picking out. Okay, we were. If it wasn't New World, it was something a little bit different from Scotland. We knew that. The ex-bourbon, like the spirit character, was quite prominent. People were picking that. The youth on it. I don't think anyone was saying this was over 10 years or whatever. This was young and vibrant. So if we took all the averages, we would have got pretty close. I think that that's a pretty good job, considering that I'm going to say about 90% of people tonight have probably never had a Nantu.
Yeah. No, it's you rarely see even the core range bottlings in Australia. I don't know. Last time I even saw one here, and they do some at 46%. They do some at cask strength as well. But to get a single cask strength out of this distillery is, I think, quite an achievement for us, and something I'm quite fond of. And the fact that we've get these fascinating whiskies that I think taste well beyond the 5 years stated on the age statement there, that are proper New World whiskies with an age statement, with the tasting notes that it has.
Yeah, excellent. And if anyone wants to take a bit of ashtray home with them, like for people who are already members or people who want to become members, is this coming up or is this past? Or
this is coming soon. This is a coming soon bottling. I'm going to predictably say around October. This one's coming soon. Okay. But you guys got
before the end of the year.
Yeah, before the end of the year. But you guys, everyone who's tuned in tonight, you're the first to taste this. Actually, pretty much along with all the whiskeys except the second one. You are the first people to taste this whiskey, which I think is rather cool, in that this is almost like a proper preview of something that's coming. Like I said, it's not here yet. I had to go through some hoops to make sure this was in time for the oak barrel packs.
So this is the one then.
This is the one.
Because when we were putting this together, Matt was like, I was going to get it to you this way. It's going to take a little bit longer. I'm just waiting on something to clear or something like that.
Yeah.
So this is the one.
If I'm being really technical and nerdy, it's more to do with the ATO and them declaring and us providing wood age certificates for Taiwanese whiskies imported into Australia. But this is the one that took a bit of struggle to get here, but now it's here, and it'll be the full shipment will be here soon. But this is something that we should expect by the October, November-ish era, but it's coming soon. Yes.
Yeah, awesome. And a quick shout out to Andy on the Society Facebook, says Taiwan is a great place to visit, by the way. And Darren Howie says you're killing us with these, and I can agree. I haven't brought my gun along. It doesn't help if he's never had Nantu before.
It's a lovely dram, that one, and it's the reason I want to throw that curveball in, because we've spent the first three whiskeys going, is this a Scotch whiskey? Is this a New World whiskey? Is this an Irish whiskey? It's like, no. And I'm loving how many people thought the first spicy and sweet was New World, and the fourth one actually was like, oh, no, that's the New World one. That's the
And a lot of people who were sure this was Scottish.
Yeah.
So,
There were people. But I got to say, Mark Teague, bloody hell, well done. I can't believe you picked a 138.
Yeah.
We've bottled 5 casks ever.
Yes, that's very good. If we were giving prizes, where he would definitely get one.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we didn't talk about prizes beforehand, so.
Shall we?
Yeah, shall we? And just on that, finally on that one that's great. Like, that's the whole point of tonight is appreciating whiskey and trying to think about them in a different way. Because I guaranteed would have gone into that whiskey with preconceptions if I knew it was from Taiwan.
Yeah,
exactly. 100%. You would have gone in thinking, now I'm expecting a not Scotch whiskey, and exactly. I'm expecting an Asian whiskey, something from Taiwan, something from Japan, something like that. It's like if you take away those preconceptions, strip away everything you want to know about it to begin with, and then come back in and go, okay, I want to learn as much as there is to learn about that distillery. Which, if I'm just touching on that point very briefly, that's something I'm really proud of that we do at the society, is these in-depths we do on the distilleries, these interviews we do with the distillers and chat with these people. It's a lot of I even like the Oak Barrel do it as well, really well, through what Scotty brings to his events. And it's that education and learning that I love about the society, which we do as well. But if you can come in to it without any preconceptions about what to expect, like, oh, I know what that distillery is, or I know where it is, it's like, no, try again. So whiskey number 5 is in the lightly peated category. Now, again, this is a bit of sort of to and fro, working out what would work best. Something to finish on here. So
this is 55%, 55.5%, lightly peated, same as the last one. I'm locking in Nantu, about 5 years old, refill bourbon cask.
It would have been quite fun to put 2 whiskeys of exactly the same side by side to go.
In different bottles. Yeah, lock it in, Eddie. I don't even need to try this one. That's what I'm going for.
So this is a premium livery, which is why your bottle has a black label. We use a different livery system at the society for different releases, and this is a black livery one, so a little bit more premium.
When you say premium, you mean in terms of it's a distillery that's hard to get generally, or it's
it could mean it's a bit of it could be an older release, older release, or a distillery that is trickier to source from. That in many cases that's true. It's generally speaking, one with a bit more age or one with a bit more scarcity on it. And then there's one step above that, which is the Vaults collection, which we see maybe 3 or 4 releases a year.
Okay, so
if
you didn't know that, this tastes old straight away.
There's some of the tasting notes I picked up whilst nosing this. I got sort of like bit of fruitcake. I got a bit of wood-fired pizza note, like olive pizza note. I got almost a Szechuan pepper and a bit of Turkish coffee on this one as well. So this is a bit of a strange one. It's a bit of a strange whiskey. Have a look at the color on that. It's an interesting color as well.
You're not overly dark. I mean, my first gut feeling on this is pushing up to, close to that 20-year-old mark, maybe 15 to 20, refill sherry from something Highlandy. So, like, I want to say, like, I'd love for it to be an Ardmore because I bloody love Ardmore.
We have had some lovely old Ardmores in the last couple of years. We had some 20, 21, 22-year-old Ardmores, which were some of the last casks out of the coal-fired stills era, which were unbelievable. But
when we had Bill Lark on with Tim Duckett a couple of nights ago, we did talk about sampling spirits and judging spirits and that sort of thing. And one of the tricks he was saying he used is actually nosing water in between, just to sort of clear things out. So because we're going from peats into, or like a little peat into a bit more peat, I felt like then I just need to clear out a little bit of things. Joey, what are you getting from this?
I'm getting that really interesting sort of, like you touched on the older age notes, falling into a little bit of that tobacco spice, a little bit of that black licorice, almost like that sort of cured leather coming in there too. And just that really lovely sort of salt and pepper undertone that comes right through it as well, bringing that like sort of salinity line through. It's a really interesting one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going in a lot of different ways.
Phil Brooks is going pretty early. He says, I call the obvious and call it an Ardbeg. Not sure on the smoke though. I never call anything an Ardbeg because Ardbeg do not sell casks to anyone apart from the Society and North Star, apparently.
Very few. Yeah.
Yeah.
A bit of history actually might be interesting. The Society was founded in 1982 by Pip Hills, as I mentioned earlier on. But in 2005 was purchased by Glenmorangie PLC. So in 2005 it was part of Glenmorangie, which then became part of Moët Hennessy. And then in 2015 we were sold to private equity again. So we are privately owned, independent, completely independent again of any senior ownership, if you like. So.
Shout out to Sarah Sanderson, also said this is a solid breakfast whiskey. It's a big breakfast. This is like proper Scottish.
This is big Scottish.
Everything deep fried breakfast.
Wow. If you've poured this a bit early, I commend you. If you've got a moment just to let that sit in the glass, I think this is one where the oxidization, even just sitting in the glass for a few moments, will help it out.
Seamus is calling Lafroig a Kalila. Again, I think he's a little bit like me trying to convince myself it's Ardmore. He's trying to convince himself it's Lafroig or Kalila because he'd love it to be that.
Yeah.
If this is from Islay or from somewhere very coastal, and again, we don't know, not every Islay distillery matures their casks, or I'm going to rephrase that. Very few Islay distilleries mature all their casks at the distillery these days. It's lost a lot. It would potentially be a little bit older than what I think it is. I'm going to actually go something, around that 15, probably pushing closer to 20-year-old, but I'm going to go mainland peated.
Just on a bit of a taste there as well. I know it's quite a rich, probably the richest one, I think, out of the 5 in terms of viscosity coming through the palate there. I imagine that in whiskey, textures, one of the most important things that could indicate distillery or regionality.
The magic of this one for me is the finish.
Now that I've tried this, I'm going back to Islay.
Yeah.
The magic is the finish on this one.
Really rich and big, and it's just kind of brooding in a sense.
And I love that finish and this style of finish that gets in your nose. It's a very aromatic finish. I find some finishes go down your throat and they warm your heart, and that's great. But I love these ones that they're up in your nose. You can almost taste it again every time you say something afterwards.
I like the Cowwheeler pick, actually.
Whiskey is my jam. Do not say port. Do not finish that sentence. Couple of
what did he say? Sorry,
he said Lafroig, and then he went port ... And I was like, don't start. Remember that you only paid $90 for this tasting. If there was a Port Ellen, it would have been a little bit more than that.
I thought he meant a port cask.
No. Oh, yeah, maybe. But funnily enough, I don't think it's too far from some of those. Yeah. Remember those Gordon MacPhail Port Ellens that were like bottled young? They were old, but like 15-year-olds.
Yeah.
There are similarities in this. But yeah, you're saying port cask. People saying Port Charlotte. Dan Mathers and Joel have both gone for Lafroig. I actually might go Lafroig after tasting it and that finish. I'm going to lock it in, Eddie. 5-year-old Nantu. If not, Lafroig.
So it's a toss-up between 5-year-old Nantu and Lafroig. I mean, it's
same thing, right?
Yeah.
How old do you think it is?
I think Matt Bailey has potentially been a lot more generous than I thought he was going to be tonight. And it could be a 15 to 20-year-old single cask Lafroig.
Okay. Yep. Any other guesses from any comments coming in on the guess of the age or the distillery? I'd love to hear them.
Yeah. So John Jarvis says Lafroig 20 years. Mark from Whiskey is My Jam is going. He says the oldest we've had, 100%. I think whatever it is, this is the oldest we've had so far. But he says over 20 years. Raf is going 25-year-old Ardbeg. I haven't had a lot of Ardbeg recently. Darren Howie says Bunnahabhain. So yeah, it could be like a Moyne cask, a peated Bunnahabhain. Could definitely see that as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to scrunch up that bit of paper I said before about mainland, and I do think we're on Islay here.
Well, let's go to the next slide, shall we? Which shows a photo of me with the photoshopped out the name of the distillery, but it will become immediately apparent. It was a very windy day. There I am standing in front of the very distillery, getting blasted by the wind and just loving every bit of it. Yeah. That is, of course, Lafroig Distillery. That photo was taken last year, and it was the one really bad day on Islay that we were there. The rest of the days on Islay were absolutely spellbindingly good. It is a Lafroig, you are correct. It is a 29 in our coding system. It's a distillery. We've got a close relationship with them. We've bottled quite a number of fantastic casks. And I have, Scotty, you were right before. I have spoiled you a little bit here in the fact that it is a 29.271 tall, dark, and mysterious. It's a 21-year-old single cask from that distillery, distilled 1998. And Mark Teague, you've been on fire tonight. It has an additional maturation and a second fill export barrique.
Well done. Well
Well done. Bloody hell. That is unbelievable, Mark. So it's a port cask additional maturation. I say additional maturation over finish because it had more than 3 years in the port barrique in that second fill. So I think it was 17 years old when it was transferred. So it's one of Ewan's. I speak to Ewan Campbell fairly regularly, and it was one of his little projects that he's working on. And this was in the running for a face cask, but it wasn't ready yet in time for the May release back in for the facial releases. But that was that's how it goes.
It was the finish on this that swung me, and then because the nose, I was definitely thinking mainlands, but as soon as that I tried it and that finished,
That came right back in.
yeah. And I guess that's again that element of, I'd erased X amount of things with the information I had, and then as I had more and more information, I could get more and more defined on what it can't be.
Yeah.
Is this whiskey, Tall, Dark and Mysterious? Do we know? Is this coming? Is this been? What's the story of this one?
Yeah, so it's on its way again. This will be probably October.
Do I dare ask if I'm a member what this would set me?
A bit.
Yeah.
Not too bad. It's not too bad. We have seen, the price of aged Isla stock is not inconsiderable now, but probably pushing 500-600.
Yeah, which is pretty good considering I can sell you, 27 and 30-year-old Lefroy for $2,000 on the shelf here at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Look, and it's the same when we released a 27 and a 29-year-old 29 a couple of years ago, which were, I think $800-900 a bottle. I mean, it's I think it's remarkable value for single cask strength whiskey, even at that end. It's like we're talking 21-year-old whiskey for $500 or $600. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, and a cask strength as well.
Natural cask strength 55.5. But I love the fact that the reason why this also fit into this tasting really well is because we went from something that was 55.5 to something that was 55.5, but just radically different whiskeys.
Yeah. I mean, I want to ask Joe. You've done a little bit of this with me when we've just been messing around here at work, and often when I'm evaluating single casks for potential oak barrel bottlings, I will give them to staff members and with a few other things and say, out of this, what would you pick? And if they don't pick the one that I've been thinking of, then we need to do that. But I mean, what have you taken away from coming from a wine background and but having done more of this blind tasting than we have? What do you take away from tonight?
I thought it was quite interesting. I mean, obviously, there's so many routes you can go down with the wine and sort of deciphering and picking. And it to me, I think that they're actually tasting whiskey blind, tasting wine blind, are not particularly different at all.
Yeah,
really, I think there's still that you're still making that new old world sort of comparison. You're still going, okay, what can't it be? Then, what we don't talk about obviously is things like ABV or as much of the cask finishes as well, like especially on that last Lefroy, that port maturation, I think played a really big role. But I think that the blueprint of both of them is actually quite the same, which I wasn't expecting going into this. I was expecting, I don't know, like a completely different style of tasting. But yeah, I think if you have the foundation, you can sort of really follow the same path. But it's quite interesting. I still think that you guys make this really bloody hard on yourselves.
Yeah,
we do.
I'm going to stick to great.
But at the end of it, we get to drink 21-year-old single cask Lefroy. So the rewards are obvious.
We recently had a 21-year-old from Distillery 21 that was full maturation in a refill, a hogshead. And that was just totally different whiskeys. And that additional maturation in port has just transformed that into something else. And I think that's what's really exciting.
Yeah. Couple of comments from Darren Howery, I think, commenting on your windswept photo there, says that one bad day. He said we had one good day in 8 on his last.
Yeah. Well, you were there in winter, so there you go. That's your mistake.
Right. Again, Seamus, who was on that Lefroy and Kalila trip, was saying, over 20 years. So well done there.
Yeah, well done, Herney. The edge on that. It's an old whiskey, that one.
Yeah, Raf in the Zoom group here says, I need one. I don't know if Raf is a member, but I think you just smashed it there. Like, obviously, access to the whiskies is one of those things, but there's a lot of benefits to the society. We are doing, for anyone who's not a member, I saw they're about $30 off.
Just use the code Whiskey Forum on our website, smws.com.au. If anyone wants to join up, we've created that code just for you here tonight. It's any of the membership types you want to use. Otherwise, go to bit.ly/SMWS Oak Barrel, and that will bring you to the page. But yeah,
I can post those links afterwards as well if you forget. But one of the things that I was a little bit jealous of because I was here was last week. We've obviously got our Archie Rose Extravaganza tastings coming up next week. Matt, you had yours last week, and all the society members that went on that tour. I got to sample the new Archie Rose single malt before anyone else in the world.
That's true. Yeah, I'll just show that page again there for anyone who won't missed out on that. Use that one word Whiskey Forum. Any of the membership types on our site, you can get $30 off your first year, which means you're sometimes getting a bottle of whiskey in this case for like $79 or something plus membership because it's a good way to jump in there. You're right, Scotty. That was one of the benefits of being a member is that we offer these experiences and these tastings around Australia, around Sydney, that do add something on to the experience that you can't get otherwise if you're not a member. And that was last week for us, even at Archie Rose, our first physical events since March or something.
Yeah, we might.
And it was like, well, what's something really special? And they said, well, we're bottling our single malt at the moment. Would you like a bottle straight off the Solera? It's like, yeah. Would I say no to that? It's like, we don't know what the proof is. It didn't get hydrometered, but it was, would have been 60-something%, but it was just lovely to taste Archie Rose and their new single malt coming up next month, which is fantastic. So that's
obviously something quite recent that just popped in my mind. It's a very good example of something that you get to do. But obviously, it's always a pleasure to work with the society. I mean,
thank you so much.
Society was through the Oak Barrel Whiskey Fair 8-9 years ago, whichever the first one was his little stall there, and been a member ever since, essentially.
Well, look, if I'm being completely honest, the first way I discovered the society was actually through the Oak Barrel as well. And that the Oak Barrel holds a special place in my heart as a place where I've always come back to and discovered whiskey from. I've learned so much from Scott's masterclasses. I've learned so much from even our own, where I get to hear Andrew talk about whiskey. There's so much that we do that I'm always still learning in the journey of whiskey, and I'm sure everyone tuning in does as well, and that's what's so important. It's exciting. There's always something going on. There's always something to learn.
Yeah, I want to get a big shout out to everyone. This was an idea we wanted to do, and I felt that as we worked on this idea, it was very much in the Sydney Whiskey Forum vein. It's the sort of whiskies that we would be drinking at Whiskey Fair anyway, but let's add an educational, conferencey, education type thing to it. So that was excellent, and thank you for being there, and thank you for everyone in the stream on the Facebooks for taking part and to having a chat and
for being part of the exploration of flavor rather than brand.
Yeah,
and this is something I love about it. It's just being able to explore these whiskeys and focus on the flavor and focus on what's in your glass rather than what is a fashionable brand on a bar. So that's
again, thank you to everyone on the stream and anyone in Melbourne who's doing it a bit tough at the moment.
Big shout out.
Hopefully these are a few whiskies that you wouldn't have tried otherwise, because some of them are new. We look forward to getting back down there and getting into some bars and visiting Tassie again.
Yes, please.
A lot of us coming to Tassie.
Yes, please. I think we're on the restricted list, Scotty, aren't we? New South Wales can't go into Tassie at the moment. Come on.
We can't. I mean, I'm on a different restricted list anyway, but hopefully when they let down the borders, they clear everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Bailey, you're joining us tomorrow as well, I think, on the stream. Is that correct?
I'll see you tomorrow afternoon, indeed. Yep.
Yeah, so from 2:00 tomorrow, as part of day 6 of Sydney Whiskey Forum, I didn't really, again, this was a great way for the Friday night equivalent. I didn't really know how you replicate 2 days and the essence of Whiskey Fair. So what we're going to do is from 2:00, just get a bunch of people into a Zoom chat that we're going to put on Facebook. Distillers from around Australia and that sort of thing, but also the auxiliary people who make Whiskey Fair what it is and the people you run into once a year. So, May Lawrence, our erstwhile photographer who has documented the Oak Barrel for the past few years. Bertie Cason, who runs the Whiskey Club. He comes up every couple of years, having a chat to him. brand ambassadors that you see every year behind the tables, that we haven't really had a spot for them to give them FaceTime in the stream in the last, or in the forum so far. So it's we're going to have them coming in at 15-minute intervals. I've done up some questions this afternoon to ask everyone. If you tune at any point from about 2 o'clock on to about 5 o'clock, ask some questions as well. We'll put it to them, whether there's hardcore questions or silly questions or whatever it is. But yeah, it could be a disaster. Could go either way, but we'll figure that out. But yeah, Matt, hope to see you there jumping around.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there from 2 onwards, and there for my 4 p.m., which will be great.
Yeah, I might need you to come in every now and again.
No, I'm there. I'm there, mate. I'm there. Don't worry.
So I'm looking forward to this.
By the way, I've just enjoyed every part of Whiskey Forum this year. It's been so good. This has been so good. This has been like the perfect viable replacement given current circumstances for FAIR. So thank you so much for having us on tonight, and thank you to everyone who tuned in and enjoyed these samples and something to taste through and explore great whiskey. But that's what it's about.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to sign off to the Facebooks and to the website streams at the moment. So thank you, everyone. We'll be back wherever you're watching right now. We will be back there from about 2 o'clock tomorrow.